Money, power, money, power,
What you got for me? I want everything. Won't get shit from me, cause it's all for me. Mama called me greedy, bred with jealousy, taking all from you, just so I can be. Ain't got room for yours, only room for mine.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American.
May I have your attention, please? So, credit sauce fit for another day, so it's work to do. Peace to my copper color kings and my copper color queens and all you other beings. Hope you and your loved ones are well. I still go by the name of Kuma Kwali, formerly known as A.D. Sanders. This is the Critical Think Podcast. This is still season 1. We're on episode 3. This is part 2 of the Washington Copper Theory series. Now, before I begin, just like always, just want to say thank you for viewing this content. I promise not to hit your brain too hard while you're spending your time with me. My aim is to motivate my nation in a positive way. And when I say my nation, of course, I'm talking about the Copper Nation. And who is the Copper Nation? That are those people who are mislabeled as the blacks, the African Americans, the niggas, my fellow Lost Niggas. This is the Washington Copper Theory series. And if you don't know about the Younger Dryas or the Younger Dryas Impact Theory, you're going to learn today. You might need 3 thinking caps for this. So if you missed the last show, you might want to go check that out as it lays the foundation for this episode that we're currently doing and the next one. Basically an example of what you can discover when you look for yourself. Yeah. So let's go ahead and dig in on some of that. So I know some of y'all are probably wondering, like, what the hell the Younger Dryas got to do with black people? Or probably some of y'all thinking, what the heck is the Younger Dryas? I hope nobody out there thinking, here we go again, another black dude trying to blame something on the white man. Well, here's the truth. So I started with my own genealogy, thinking I was going to just debunk like a slave myth. I don't believe I'm a descendant of slaves, but I couldn't let that be my only motivation for wanting to know about the past. I had this deep down feeling like I'm missing a link somewhere, like further back, like I felt I was on a bigger mission. So in the previous installation of the Washington Copper Theory series, I shared the vision. In the vision, I believe I was shown that like all history known to me was extremely distorted or untrue. Now, as an adult, I already know that just by watching the news, which is why I don't watch it any longer. Like, they don't even know when Yeshua's birthday is. You know, like, what could I possibly discover looking back? But I started anyway. Yeah, so I noticed every time I found something else that I wasn't told about. So I investigate that. And then when I get to investigating, I find something else that I never even knew it existed. So I developed this method called the perspective cube, where I'm just looking at the same thing from 6 different angles, making sure I ain't missed nothing. So in doing that, I asked myself 2 questions to guide me, like what was happening before this event, what happened after. But, you know, that's usually how I look into stuff. But what is this Younger Dryas? It was a period that basically ended our ice age. It's named the Younger Dryas because at the stupid low temperature, this plant shows up. So they called it the Younger Dryas. We're going to focus on the Younger Dryas impact. And I got to put the word theory in there, or these authorities or censors, and I don't know why people all started crying for whatever reason. But later I'll lay out how the Younger Dryas was used to wash copper and why was it so important. But here's why I apply that question of guidance. What was happening before this Younger Dryas, and what happened after this Younger Dryas impact? Right? So before it happened, there was a continuation of the original African migration by boats, ships, water vessels west across the Atlantic, while it was other peoples migrating out of Africa on foot to the east. This was open knowledge throughout the African continent, South America, the Caribbean, Turtle Island, several other lands over there in the east. Apparently, everybody except for Europe, after the impact, about 11,000, 15,000 years ago, until about 1400 AD. It's like just barely 3,400 years ago. That ain't that long. The copper color civilizations was replenishing what had been destroyed during its impact, rebuilding the Americas and the islands, you know? So, I'm about to check you back right quick. All right. Told y'all I was going to take y'all back. Just let me get back right here by my bearings. I need to get me some water. Never realized how dry my mouth get when I'm talking to people that ain't even in the room with me. All right. Let's go on this journey. All right, what y'all see right here is Ice Age Earth. All right. Where we live now is in a period called the interglacial period, which is the ending of the Ice Age, when the ice is letting go. About 20,000 years ago was our last one. It started ending about 15,000, 11,000 years ago. And it's been melting ever since. So that's what I call global warming. You know what I mean? That's a different topic. But this image is illustrating the positioning of the glacial cover on Turtle Island or North America and the world, right? Now, focusing in on this picture, on Turtle Island, you can see that we had the glacial cover, in the west, in the mountains, above the desert areas, southwest. And then there was even more glacial covering reaching out of Canada from west to east as far down as Missouri. Now, for people that don't believe this type of stuff happened, the ice left some receipts. About 207 of them in the form of erratic nature deposits. All of these little dots right here are things like very large, huge, out-of-place boulders that can be scientifically traced back to where they came from. In the case of these items, they came from the north, as in Canada. So they were left behind when the ice melted or when, waters was rushing down in the form of mega floods, right? So I did make an understatement when I said the word impact. So the Younger Dryas impact has a boundary area where things was devastated, either by a series of mega floods or these impacts, which caused the mega floods. So within this area so far, we believe it to be like 22 impacts, several major hits, covering from Turtle Island all the way to the Middle East, as far south down to South America. This is called the Younger Dryas boundary area. It's believed, I think it happened in a few waves in a particular window of time. And good thing for the Earth, but to be coming out the ice age, but it's kind of horrible with the destruction that this type of stuff leave behind. So let's take a look at this impact crater. You notice the ring in it. It's got a raised rim of sediment around it. And then the little area that's dragging off to the bottom, call it impact push, right? So that was on Mars. This is in North America, Turtle Island, real life. I believe it's in Utah. Picture this meteor coming from the left upper of this image, smacking into the ground. You note the ring. Inside the ring is where the town is now. Around the town, you see the raised rim of sediment. They would look like hills to us. And you can see, well, the impact bush is off to the right out of the screen a bit, but that's where it'll be. Another one of these big old craters hit 31 kilometers across, 300 meters deep, hit on that Greenland ice sheet. That's enough space to fit 3 Washington, D.C.s in it. Even though this image down there at the bottom say you can fit 1, you can fit 3 of them in that circle. So they found it with some ice-penetrating radars from the air while they were studying the ice sheets. It's believed that one that size hit Canada, also assisting in the breaking up of the glacial cover on Turtle Island, producing, these mega floods. So I believe that spot to be even larger is now called the Hudson Bay. I also believe Greenland was attached to Turtle Island at the top, but it broke off as a result of this country-sized meteor impact all these years ago. And, this little window in time gave a nice little clean sheet for history to be written on all over Europe, Africa, all the way Middle East and Mongolia and all the way back over to Turtle Island. So basically, that's the Younger Dryas theory, Younger Dryas impact theory in a nutshell. Had to get that to y'all for some background. So you needed the background, and now it's time for the thinking caps that I mentioned to y'all. So after I'm examining these impacts in this theory, I get like a billion questions, like what was it like on Earth? Like, what was the nature like? What was the plants? Like, where were the people? Like, was it any structures? And, in studying all of this stuff, I noticed like patterns in the results, like in the questions that I was asking. The terrain over here looked like the terrain over there. The grade of the soil was the same over here, and it was over there. It was the same. Geological and geographical features was the same, and it was people settled over here, and it was people settled over there. Far away, close, it was structures. So I started looking harder, you know what I mean? So I also noticed that the ice was on an inner and an outer type situation, but, that depends on how you're looking at the globe. If you're looking at it as a globe, you're going to see it at the top and the bottom. If you're looking at it as a flat, it's going to be inner and outer. But that's for my friends in the world and the globe camp. That's a whole different topic I'm going to cover a whole another day. So, but after I was staring at these maps here for about an hour, it's like the mountains and the rivers just started talking to me. Like the rivers told me, I've always been here to carry all the tears away when the sky weeps. And the mountains was like, always been here to embrace the land like a child. And, that's when it hit me. When a meteor hit this continent or any ice sheet, that water gonna melt and it's gonna need to go somewhere. So I put some water in the bowl and I was just dripping some off my fingers at an elevated position just to see what that looked like. And it would look similar like this. I noticed the waves. So with each of those impacts, it would have been a wave, not only from the water, but the impact of the wave itself. So that same had to be true on this ice sheet and down, over the mountains, and then over there on the Greenland ice sheet and over in Europe too. All of it. They all had this little melt runoff little area. The water now ain't got somewhere to run all the way to Mongolia. Now the water can escape. All right. So Turtle Island got the Rockies in the west, Appalachians in the east. Those are the arms that embrace the child, right? So Turtle Island got countless rivers and tributaries running from the mountains in both directions, east-west. The carrying away of the tears when the sky weeps. That's like the draining of the water from the land when all that ice melted. It created floods, and sometimes those little floods create ice dams, and it'll get obstructed from the flow, and it choke up for a period of time, and you wouldn't really notice this is what's going on. Well, eventually, more and more impacts come. I told you this period happens over a little window. So eventually that water busts out. When that water busts out, at this particular time in history, this is what I believe may be the great floods that all the religious myths, world myths, several other oral traditions talk about, from east to the west, even stories from Turtle Island, the place where they claim wasn't nobody populated with yet. Like, I believe this process took place 11,000, 15,000 years ago over in Europe also, right? The water began to break through, right? Mega flooding down through the Mediterranean Sea, right? All over into North Africa, even over into East Mongolia, right? Depositing all of the sands and sediments that created, I believe, the desert of the Sahara and the Middle East, all the way to Mongolia, right? Now, that's crazy. Those are water ripples right there. You only get that from a tremendous amount of water, just like when you're standing at the beach. But this is on top of the land, right? So, like I told y'all before, man, information out here. So, told y'all there was people on Turtle Island in several different forms, including man beasts of several different forms. What specific kind is still being discovered? They still digging stuff up. Like, think about it. If it's man beasts everywhere else in the world, why would they not be over here on Turtle Island? It just don't make sense. Thousands, maybe millions of years than what we told, right? So archaeologists in the West right now, they currently uncovering all kind of data. All kind of data. After all, it's the same science they did tell us about Lucy, the being they found over in Africa, or Eve being the oldest specimen of man beast. This was like 3.9 million years ago, as you can see on this tree, right? Around the 3 million year mark is marked with Lucy, right? That's what they told me when I was a kid. And nowadays they done found another group, which is represented on that lower branch. They 4.4 million years older than that one. I believe it's species older than that. And they wasn't all ape-like people. That's another topic we'll go over another day. But all these questions about who and what and where, I'm getting some answers on what was happening before the impacts of these floods. They left a message under the layer of sediments that was funneled down after it washed down into the Gulf of Mexico. Here's a depiction of life near White Sands, New Mexico. This is during the time where they said there wasn't nobody in Turtle Island. And this is based on what they dug up and dated it to a time period. Here goes something else they depicted based off of what they dug up and the evidence around it. This is a young teenage girl or adult age woman with a child with some megafauna in the picture. They running. Like, what are they fleeing from? I don't know, maybe the meteors. Maybe that flood was on the way and they was far enough south to, get away. They left their footprints in the salts that deposit from previous oceans that covered on Turtle Island. And they wiped away life and shit. This water ain't no joke. It's their actual footprints. Thousands of years old. White Sands, New Mexico. You can go see them today. Come get me if you do. They told us there wasn't nobody here on Turtle Island during the time that these footsteps was deposited. These are not Clovis people. They're not Folsom people. They're not Native Americans. They were some of the original copper-colored people, lighter brown tone people who traveled up from South Africa, South America, after they came across that original migration on that Atlantic Ocean from Africa. All right, man. It's a serious statement. Please listen closely. My fellow copper-colored people on Turtle Island, the Caribbean, South America, Africa, it's my claim today that this is how the copper-colored people were washed away from Turtle Island temporarily. These people are early ancestry of ours in the West and descendants of those from the East. A very large portion of those folks were swept away from these younger dryas event impacts and these mega floods all around the world 11,000, 15,000 years ago, until they gradually started resuming to return about 10,000 years ago from South American roots coming from Africa, using the Mokoros, the dugouts, and all of those other modified rafts that y'all people over there in Africa know about. Y'all know about those boats. So y'all know I'm not making this up. If somebody in Africa watching this, that's a very large place, but y'all know what Mokoros and dugouts are, right? But y'all was replenishing this land over here, the copper people, again, in the West, as far up, all the way up to the Appalachian Mountain regions on Turtle Island, along with the others who traveled before from the North Corridor, before the Ice Age, who was already up here, like that lady that was running in that image that was depicted. They arrived from the west side of South America through the Sunderland and the eastern water routes, riding the same equatorial current, but on the other side of South America. Remember, we started traveling the oceans before the water melted from these glaciers, meaning we had a shorter route and a less time on the water than the Europeans that came west thousands of years after that, at a minimum. And on our own accord, the Africans traveled and migrated freely at least 200 years before the European even know how to sail below the Sahara Desert. This was demonstrated by Master Abu Bakr II when he gave Mansa Musa his throne. You can go and read what Mansa Musa wrote, right? This is how come the copper-colored people met the Europeans when they came this way. They even wrote about it in their books when they landed over here in the Caribbean. We were met by copper-colored people. That's what was going on in the West pre-Columbia. One of the few things they wrote down in their journal, like I just said, on their way to destroy our libraries and literature and maps and the proof of all of the knowledge of the pre-Younger Dryas world. You know what I mean? So go learn what Mansa Musa said about where his predecessor went. If you ain't heard about it, he came west, traveling using 2,000 boats. He was traveling just like the others did. They came before him on migration, not slavery. Right? Using the same routes that all the other indigenous people used pre, post, and during European colonization of the West. Now let's look at some more of these pictures. You see these? See these routes? This is the same routes that the Europeans took, which are the routes that we told them about. Right? Now, what's the true reason they came over here? I don't know. It's his story. It wasn't spices. You know what I mean? West Indies way over there. This short trip over here, man, I'm telling you, wasn't looking for no spices. You know? It was looking for the treasures. This information ain't being discussed publicly or explored. I mean, folks know about it, but it ain't widely disseminated. You want to know why? Guess why? You know what I mean? Conquest. You know, if you want to see what the waters did out west on Turtle Island, close up, go to Google Earth right now. or any satellite image of the Earth in high def. Examine the satellite of the landmass. Look at all the land masses on the Earth. It's fascinating. Illustrated in this map is the places where the old and new forest growth is in the world. Now, excluding deforestation, this is what I see. Notice where the desert and the dry and the arid lands are. This is a result of catastrophic geological change, like mega floods. This is not by chance. Like, these are the locations of either where the glaciers were or where the water drained to with large force. The land still look like that today. Mega floods running off meltwater. That's how it looks right now, all the way across the northern hemisphere. Everywhere that there's a desert. And if you go through history and look above what were above these places before these deserts, it was glaciers. Now, specifically look at the Gulf of Mexico. You can still see where the sediments were swept from the land and where they was deposited. And they still being deposited on top of the salt, which is being pushed up as a result of the sediments still being laid down on there. And it's making our energy. The fossil fuels made from things that's once lived, including people, compressed down into the earth as sediments settle down on top of them. This is true for every era of life, like even before people. That's how biofuels come about. The fuels we use likely come from the last, 100,000 years of bioaccumulation, including what washed away during this younger dryas. Now, I ain't no energy expert, but I can see all of these goddamn oil rigs. Now you know why the Gulf of Mexico was full of fossil fuels and everywhere else. Under the Sahara Desert and possibly the Arabian Peninsula, which is an extension of Africa, once it was a lush green forest, right? The forest and the great city Atlantis, which can still be seen in northern Africa from the sky. Look at the satellites. But back then they disappeared under these sediments at the same time by way of a great flood that swept across the land. Now that's what it looked like. Right? And those things that were covered up, that lush floor, that lush forest and all of that, that's I believe that's where the oil in North Africa comes from. Right? It's the fossilized remains of the forest and the creatures that was covered by all the sediments that was washed in by these great floods. Huh? It's also how coal is created. We got large deposits of it. It seemed like in the highest parts of the land. Now, everything getting flooded, where you gonna go? Up. This is where I think all the remaining big megafauna, land dinosaurs, if it was, and any people may have made their last stands. Tell me how that coal are in those places. If you fill this joint up with earth, those are going to be the places we've run into. If you fill this up with water, those are places we run into, the highlands, right? So, as you can see with a combined graph of the coal mines, or the gas pipelines, and the oil wells, that's a lot of remains of a whole bunch of something and somebody's that the world is getting energy off of. A whole lot. And in the case of Turtle Island, look like the Copper Man still making move. That's a lot of cases closed at once, or at least until we get up under Antarctica ice. Man, let's try to analyze and correct some of this. So here's where I apply my question of guidance again. Like, what happened before that and what was the result? Also apply my perspective cube. So here go my new question. Since the colonization of the Europeans and worldwide, with the masses not knowing about the information or the the events of the Younger Dryas impact, I think, or should I say, in this question form, has the story of the human migration been told incorrectly, intentionally, because they found out about this incident and was like, hey, remember they destroyed information, they being the Europeans, as soon as they got off the boat, after greeting the Kopper people, like, hey, what's up? Now, as a result, several cultures have been repeatedly lied to about their origins. Now, who wrote the Europeans' history and where they got it? Who wrote the Kopper people history on Turtle Island since colonization? Where they get it? Let's do some recapping right quick on what they told us about this human migration story, like real quickly, just so we ain't lost in the sauce, right? So let's check this out. So a beast is created. And after a migration on foot to the north and the east, out of Africa, it evolved into at least 4 species that we know of. Now, during the thousands of years of travels east, the Ice Age comes. All of a sudden, we get blocked up, halted on the land bridge of Beringia because of the ice glaciers. So we stuck there, waiting, hunting, building shelters until 12,600 years ago, when the ice finally decided to melt through the corridors over in the west side of Turtle Island up from Canada. And now they just melting by themselves and the corridor opened up. And now things can continue to, people and land animals can continue to come on down. Now we're in Turtle Island and now they're in South America. Never even going into Antarctica. And pretty much the rest of it is history, his story as it's told. All right, let's blow all that up, right? It's time to do some critical thinking. This is what it's going to take to free my peoples. It's truth. That's it. Now, wasn't nobody corrupting this joint until this civilization of the modern man then obtained this knowledge from these prior civilizations, which is in Alaska, or not Alaska, Antarctica, under all that ice, which is why we can't get up in there. Now, those in possession of this true knowledge, they now run the world. Like, look at today. Like, few key giveaways, again, are a lack of the true access to Antarctica, even with private funds. The other giveaway, to keep the true knowledge to themselves, which is the source of their power, they kill the messengers. If you ain't repeating the messages correctly or hitting the right notes or try to loosen their grip, you out of here. Beat it. You know, I done seen the footprints. Now let's trace them back to where they came, right? Now, this basic explanation of these routes traveled that I think are supported by science. The archaeological world gonna fill in the rest of the physical blanks pretty soon. Hope I live to see that. This theory of mine. I hope it gets proven. You know what I mean? I hope I'm here to see it. Or just at least see it getting sharpened over time, you know, as the next generation fill in the blanks with theories of their own. Right? Now let's take a look at the travel routes that they said. Now, starting at where they want to start. Let's take this apart. All right, let's do this in the timeline. All right, let's ask this question. What happened before we started leaving? We was sitting there developing our brains and tools, right where we was at, and then we started spreading out. Now, that was most likely due to territorial demands and space requirements, but more importantly, I bet you it was due to curiosity. Now, most of these migration maps, like the one on the screen, began to travel onset time of 170,000 years ago. You can look in the upper left-hand corner. 170,000 years ago. Then they tell us Homo sapiens 300,000 years old. So why don't this timeline start at 300,000 years ago? Most of the material they put out, it started 170,000 years ago. That's 130 years of development, of figuring things out, of travel, specifically south and the west. South as in Antarctica and west as in the Western Hemisphere. Secondly, I think humans are too curious not to notice things floating on currents of water. Things like large logs and debris and animals floating on this debris in and out of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the distance from Africa's west coast to South America east coast, that's one of the shortest ocean voyages on Earth. And it got a natural current in both directions, aided by equatorial winds, meaning all you got to do is paddle. This older dude did it in this little custom canoe. He came all the way from like Ireland or something. Now, we too curious, like babies or a little kid, not to have hopped on something of our own or try to repeat what we seen floating in the water and hopped on it and see where we floated. Yeah. Over time, we made land tools and water tools for reasons like fishing and carrying water and travel, like mokoros and dugouts and other modified rafts, like I mentioned earlier. Man, let's hop over to this land bridge thing. All right. They always bring your attention to 12,600 years ago. They want you to believe that no people came to Turtle Island prior to that time. Well, I already showed you how we approached from the east over from Africa over to South America up to Turtle Island, right? The other route across the Northland Bridge through Siberia was used thousands of years like before the Ice Age. After the Ice Age got here, that land route was altered from the land to the water. From the land to the water. The land route opened back up 12,600 years ago, allowing land passage to resume after this Younger Dryas era. And this is where the European people like to pick up real history, the real in the before, the true knowledge, and say this is where it all started. Meanwhile, while all that was going on, we moving about on these currents, going all over the world. Everybody but the European until they came down from Europe and we showed them how. Coming with these weapons of war. Iron tools, cannonballs. We got sticks and bow and arrows. We was peaceful people, going all over the place until we can confirm that we can get back to where we started. Along the way, you had older groups teaching younger groups on how to improve on stuff. Just like today, in huge leaps. Yeah, we still don't even know how they built the megaliths. And if you track them around the world, you can see the path of how we traveled around this joint. All the old stuff is built in a certain degree around the earth. And if you match that up, it shows you exactly where we traveled in both directions. Yeah? Why is this info being hidden from us? Yeah? It don't make any sense to me. It don't make no sense. But like I said before, you can be told whatever you want. They can tell us whatever they want, as long as they hold all of the real information. Yeah. You know, why they just want to hide this information. You know. And my conclusion to this, man, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Yeah. I received a vision. It lead me to studying about 5 new to me unrelated sciences on the earth. I don't have a paid degree in any science, yet I can comprehend this stuff. That's because the creator told me to do it and unlock my brain so that I can have the ability to read in understand complex things, should I say. It ain't just me, but so all of us can do that if you just go and seek the information. So, you know, I went and sought it. It seemed like I found a safe that had a 80 million piece jigsaw puzzle in it. You know, I'm sure a couple pieces missing, lost, stolen, destroyed, whatever. But I'm putting it together enough to get a picture. And I always heard that, you know, knowledge is power, but man, it's like 30 levels up for me. I mean, it's like 30 levels up for me. Like, I can't even look at the world and this ain't no more. Like, I actually believe that there's folks out here in the world collectively who took knowledge and rearranged it. You know, that's bogus. A fellow without their resources and without their corrupt mindset can come across this stuff and come to this same conclusion with access to this specific knowledge. What you think they did with it? Right? I used to believe that I wasn't a victim or whatever per se, and I didn't want to believe that so-called white man was the reason for everything that seemed off or unfair, or that the so-called white man is holding me back, and ain't no systematic this or no systematic that. Yeah, I decided to rethink that. They call this America now, but it's still Turtle Island. And soon they're going to realize that washing copper make it stand out more. So in the next installation of the series, we're going to investigate the standard American myth. Thank you for listening. Listen again. Share it. Hit the like button. Kumi Kole out the door. Reminding you to be critical when you think.
Mommy,
what you got for me? I want everything. Won't get shit from me, 'cause it's all for me. Mama called me greedy, bred with jealousy, taking all from you just so I can be. Ain't got room for yours, only room for mine. If you get too much, then it's time to die. You're the peasant type, I live a royal life, sitting on my throne, golden diamonds on. Got the world in my palm, while I reach for the stars. Got my feet on the moon, while I'm puffing on Mars. Damn, where they do that at? Right? I'm in America, how can I forget? Home of the brave with the scars of the slave. Home of Trayvon and the KKK. If you ain't got money, then you ain't about nothing. Tell them you got God, they say you got nothing. Scheme behind your back, smiling, your face frontin'. That's just the politicians, I ain't even know the judges. The judges? Fuck it, I'm living in the snake pit, hoping I don't get bit. Getting bombarded with the
Mommy, power, Mommy, power, Mommy, power,
what you got for me? I want everything. Won't get shit from me, 'cause it's all for me. Mama called me greedy, bred with jealousy, taking all from you just so I can be. Ain't got room for yours, only room for mine. If you get too much, then it's time to die. You're the peasant type, I I live a royal life, sitting on my throne, golden diamonds on, got the world in my palm, while I reach for the stars, got my feet on the moon, while I'm puffing on more.
Power, 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 power.